it's Kristen, and this is the bonus material for the Achieving More Results module. Congratulations, you made it through it. I hope that your organization achieves more results after going through it. But before we move on to our next module, I wanted to give you some recommendations. I know from my history with the organization I lead over the years, I have hired a lot of vendors. I've hired a lot of contractors, some who worked out beautifully, who became dear friends and still to this day work in some capacity for our organization, and others who were disappointments, who I look back and think, wow, were we really good stewards of our supporters' investment with that hire? And it's hard. A lot of times you have a problem, you don't have the expertise to solve that problem. You bring in somebody who promises you the moon and does not deliver. And so I've learned a little bit about how to be discerning when hiring contractors and vendors. But I've also learned how to better evaluate them as well. For example, we had one vendor, contractor who we had hired, who was very expensive, had a high retainer, promised us a lot. We got to the evaluation process of him and just looked at the contract, and we said, my vice president and myself were like, we're not getting what we need out of him. I'm not producing more metrics because of him being on board. I'm not fundraising more money. It's just not worth the cost. And we made the decision to let that vendor go. And it was the right decision. However, I implemented one piece of advice he had given me. One piece of advice. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit in the fundraising module. This piece of advice, I'll tell you what it is. But I implemented this one piece of advice. Because I did that, we've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, it wasn't instantaneous. But now that I look back 5 years later at that one piece of advice, my investment in paying that expensive retainer for that consultant, for that vendor, was totally worth it. But I had no idea at the time. So there are definite values to bringing in experts, folks who've gone through this before, and who kind of can walk with you and step by step with you. I think you have to be discerning about who you hire. You have to be very careful if someone's promising to raise you $1 million. Oh, this is so easy. I'm going to be able to raise 6-figure gifts left and right. Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. Fundraising is hard. It's very, very hard. Especially developing a relationship with those givers, with those who have the capacity to give 6-figure gifts. That's not an overnight process that happens. It's something that you have to continue to build. It's a relationship that you build, and it's strategic and it's step by step. It's not overnight. So I think all of us can do a better job probably of discerning vendors when consultants come and say they can do this for us, of really think about, can they really deliver what they're saying? And if I do sign a contract with them, let's make sure there's benchmarks in that contract to measure their success. Or maybe there's compensation that's tied to their success, where they know that they're not just getting a $5,000 a month retainer, that they actually have to perform and they have to deliver XYZ by this date. So anyway, I want to list some vendors that I trust, some consultants in this field that I trust, about how to create, maximum organizational change that's going to maximize your results. Also, I have some books that I mentioned throughout my session, so I just wanted to put those here for you as well. So I'm going to share my screen and give you some information, and hopefully it's helpful for you. All right, so the first one is Evangelium. I spoke about Evangelium earlier. So that is Pat Lencioni, so the author of The Advantage, which I talked about. He founded a consulting group called the Table Group, and then from the Table Group they founded Evangelium. Evangelium is sort of the ministry wing of the Table Group. So they take the principles from The Advantage and they apply them. They apply them in business, and now they're applying them to ministries, which have some unique challenges and kind of key differences from businesses, as we all know. So Evangelium, I will tell you just upfront, I was really hesitant to bring Evangelium into our organization, and I was very resistant to change. I did not want to have awkward conversations with our team. I did not want to have to take 2 days, put down my phone, not do anything else but talk about feelings and how people were feeling about things. That is like the least fun thing I have to do in my organization. And my vice president, Tina, said, we have to do this. Kristen, we have to get the conflict resolved. We're never going to be able to grow until we get, our home base solid, until our team is solid. And so we did. We brought in Kyle, the vice president. I listed his email down here for you. And Kyle has a totally different personality than me. So there was a lot of conflict and butting heads just between the two of us. But he was amazing, very grace-filled, and helped us navigate difficult, unpleasant conversations, things that hadn't been talked about for years that should have been talked about. And because they hadn't, they had festered. So he did a great job. So I would encourage you, when I was talking about having the healthy soil, I was talking about core values. If any of that was kind of really resonating in your head, check out Evangelium. You can contact Kyle. I probably should tell him I put his name up here in case he gets emails. I'll let him know. The other vendor I was talking about when we went over the organizational one-pager was Ministry Ventures. So Ministry Ventures is a nonprofit. They're actually in Georgia, and their whole nonprofit mission is to help other nonprofits succeed. So you can sign up with them to go through a coaching program. You pay them. They have I think one-off kind of webinars and coaching programs. They also have I did a complete coaching program, so it was a huge binder, as I said before, big stack, but it was kind of soup to nuts, how to start a nonprofit, how to run it, HR, legal compliance, boards, all of that stuff. They even went into a little bit of the fundraising. It wasn't a lot of fundraising, but it was, I talked about developing your story and your brand, and I'll use I think I'll use some of the things I learned from them in the fundraising module as well. But you can check them out. Beth Bennett is their director of coaching. She's been with them since before I even signed up with them and went through the program years ago with them. So you can contact her on her website. I think that's the easiest way to get in touch with her. So check out those organizations if when I talked about them, if that appealed to you. Some books to review: Forces for Good. So that was session 1. I talked about those 6 practices of high impact nonprofits. I only talked about 5. The 6th one is Making Markets Work, which for what I do is very difficult to get businesses to partner with a pro-life organization. But maybe your organization's different. If you run a homeless shelter, domestic abuse shelter, things like that, you can definitely make markets work for you. So that's a great book to check out. I talked about The Advantage. This is the picture of the audio book. Pat Lencioni has tons of books. He has one called The Ideal Team Player, The 5 Dysfunctions of the Team, or other books we actually make all of our new team members read. I believe The Ideal Team Player, talking about hungry, humble, and smart, people smart. The John Maxwell 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. That was the first John Maxwell book I ever read, and I think I went on to read like 8 more in like the same summer. And I made my team read it. This is where I was talking about the law of the lid and how you have to, really continue to grow your leadership skills, and how, you can and should be hiring for your weaknesses. The other book I didn't talk about, but I had to throw it in here because I just love this book. It's called Blueprint for Revolution. One of our team members actually bought it for me, I think for my birthday one year. And it just sat on my shelf. And a friend of mine, David B. Wright, who founded 40 Days for Life, took it. He was at my office, saw it, took it, never gave it back to me. He was like, I've written so many notes in the margin. So I had to buy myself another copy of the book. I think David still has my original book. But this is a great book. It's about, how, a group of young people, and, they're Serbians, who really kind of started the student resistance movement to Slobodan Milosevic. And it's fascinating to read. The writer, he does a fantastic job. He's written other books. But what I love about it is the out-of-the-box thinking and the problem solving that these students had to go through. They were, living in living in not so great of circumstances, right? So the citizens were not armed. There was an armed police force. If you had, this really it was a dictatorship. If you spoke out, you were immediately jailed, could be in prison for life, could be killed. But these are the students that, rose up and created a movement of Serbians to rise up against this dictatorial regime. And now this writer actually, I think he's lectures at Harvard regularly. I think he might be a fellow, but he actually has a whole nonprofit, and they go worldwide, and they help leaders of other, leaders of other kind of new movements. So the movement that happened in Egypt a few years ago, those leaders, those young people actually met with their team and kind of planned out how they were going to fight for freedom. So I love the out-of-the-box problem solving and thinking. And so I think you'll just be inspired by the book. So I created this Amazon shop page for you. That way, any of the books and the modules that we talk about, and even maybe some of the books, I'm not sure if Brendan talked about books. We talked about a few, but I'm not sure he gave you those recommendations. If he does, I'll make sure to put them there, and all the books will kind of be organized by the module. So Amazon, and of course, if you go to Amazon, make sure to do smile.amazon.com, and you can do Smile to Students for Life or any other organization. If your organization signed up with Amazon, you should do that, and you can smile to yourself, and then you all get a portion of the I think it's like 0.5% of the proceeds. So make sure you check out those books. But I hope you enjoy. I hope you're enjoying this training, and I hope you took away some key points from the module. And I guess I'll see you in the Raise More Fun module. Bye.